Get your hands off that glass and your black ass out of my sight. The words sliced through Vivaldi's strings like shattered crystal. Charlotte Whitmore, blood-red Dior clinging to her frame, diamonds catching the chandelier light, doesn't wait for an answer. Her wrist tilts. White wine arcs through the air, splashing down Bailey Morty's gold satin gown in a deliberate cascade. Oops. The smirk is practiced, perfected over years of getting away with cruelty. Maybe stick to serving the drinks instead of stealing them. Her mother gasps with theatrical delight, pearls swinging. Charlotte, you've ruined her dress, but she's laughing, champagne flute raised like a trophy. Her father, Richard Whitmore, real estate empire, $3 billion in assets, bellows approval. That's my girl. These charity crashers need to learn boundaries. His scotch sloshes as he gestures toward Bailey like she's debris to be cleared. The circle tightens. Phones emerge from clutches and jacket pockets, screens glowing, recording. Whispers ripple through silk and wool. Who is she? Why is she here? Did you see what Charlotte just did? Bailey Morty stands motionless. Wine drips from her hem onto white marble, each drop a timer counting down. Her posture remains perfect, shoulders back, chin level, hands relaxed at her sides. But her eyes, dark and unflinching, track every face, every phone, every exit. She doesn't speak because she doesn't need to. Have you ever seen someone seal their own fate and mistake it for victory? By sunrise, the Whitmore name would be worth less than the wine staining Bailey's dress. And Charlotte Whitmore would learn what real power looks like when it stops pretending to be polite. Bailey had stood in her brother's office 3 days earlier, watching him review surveillance feeds from half the city's high-rises. Vincenzo didn't look up immediately. He never did. Control meant making even your family wait. I want to go to the Whitmore Gala, she said. His fingers paused over the keyboard. We received an invitation. I'll have Marco arrange security. Alone. Now he looked up. Vincenzo Morty's eyes were the same shade as hers, dark enough to hide calculations, sharp enough to cut through lies. Explain. Bailey moved to the window overlooking the financial district. 40 stories below, people hurried through lives they thought they controlled. You protect this city, you own half of it, but do you actually know who you're protecting? I know exactly who pays, who steals, who needs reminding. His voice carried the weight of 1,000 enforced agreements. You know their bank accounts and their weaknesses, but do you know what they say when they think no one's listening, what they really believe about people like us? Vincenzo leaned back in his leather chair, the kind that cost more than most people's cars. People like us own them, their beliefs are irrelevant. Are they? Bailey turned to face him. The Whitmores throw a charity gala every year, millions donated to underprivileged communities. They smile in photos with black children, write checks to social justice foundations, but what do they say at the champagne fountain when the cameras are off? Understanding flickered across her brother's face. You want to see the truth. I want to know if the people we allow to exist in our city deserve the privilege. She crossed her arms, the gesture identical to their father's, the man who'd built this empire before Vincenzo inherited it. If they're genuine or just performing. Vincenzo studied her for a long moment. Outside, a helicopter passed, its spotlight sweeping across buildings the Morty family owned through shell corporations and silent partnerships. And if they're performing, then we know exactly who they are, and we decide what that information is worth. He stood, walking to the liquor cabinet, pouring 2 fingers of bourbon that cost more per bottle than the Whitmores paid their housekeepers per month. He handed her a glass. No security detail, no driver, no family name on the guest list. Just Bailey Morgan, consultant. She sipped the bourbon, feeling its burn settle warm in her chest. If anything happens, nothing will happen that I can't handle. She set down the glass. I'm a Morty, Vincenzo, I don't need guards to prove it. He smiled then, the rare expression reserved only for her. No, you just need them to realize it after it's too late. 3 days later, she would stand in a gold satin gown with wine dripping down her dress, proving him right. The Whitmore estate sprawled across 12 acres of waterfront property they believed they owned. Bailey knew better. The deed sat in a trust controlled by Morty subsidiaries, buried under 5 layers of corporate structure. The Whitmores paid rent disguised as property taxes, never realizing they were tenants in their own kingdom. She moved through the crowd like water, unnoticed. The gold satin gown was expensive but understated, no logos, no flash, nothing that screamed wealth. Her jewelry was minimal. Her clutch was leather, not exotic skin. She dressed to disappear among people who only saw what glittered. It took 17 minutes to confirm her suspicions. At the ice sculpture, a gaudy swan hemorrhaging champagne from its beak, two women in Chanel dissected their housekeeper's accent. "I can barely understand Maria anymore, she's getting lazy with her English." The other nodded, diamonds swaying from her ears. "Fire her, there are plenty who actually want to work." Near the orchestra, a silver-haired man in Brioni told his associate about blocking a low-income housing development. "Property values, James, can't have those people bringing down the neighborhood." His laugh carried over the violins. Charlotte Whitmore held court by the grand staircase, a crimson beacon of entitlement. Her audience, 5 young women and 3 men, all children of old money, hung on every word. "Daddy's thinking about expanding into the North District," Charlotte announced, twirling her wine glass. "All those condemned buildings, he's going to clear them out, build luxury condos." A blonde in emerald silk frowned. "But aren't their families still living there?" Charlotte's laugh was sharp, practiced. "Squatters, Madison, they're squatters, Daddy's lawyers will handle the evictions." She sipped her wine. "Besides, they should be thanking us. We're bringing jobs, economic development. If they can't afford to live there anymore, maybe they should try harder." "What about the community center?" This from a young man who looked uncomfortable. "My sister volunteers there. She says it's the only safe space for kids in that area." "Then maybe," Charlotte's smile turned cruel, "those kids' parents should stop having children they can't afford to raise." The group laughed, uncertain but complicit. "It's not our job to subsidize their poor choices." Bailey watched from 15 feet away, memorizing faces. The North District project would never break ground. Vincennes already owned the buildings through intermediaries, but Charlotte didn't know that. None of them did. They lived in a world where money meant power, where cruelty was casual, where people were obstacles to profit margins. They donated to charity for tax breaks and social proof, then went home to estates built on displacement. Charlotte's eyes swept the room, landing briefly on Bailey. Her gaze slid past, dismissive, just another nobody in a nice dress. Bailey felt the weight of her brother's question, do they deserve the privilege? She had her answer. Now she just needed them to confirm it publicly. Bailey had moved to the champagne fountain, studying the crystal tiers with the same attention she gave to financial reports. The engineering was impressive, recirculating pump temperature control, LED lighting that made the liquid glow like liquid gold. "Excuse me," the voice behind her carried the sharp edge of assumed authority. "I don't think we've met." Bailey turned. Charlotte Whitmore stood 3 feet away, wine glass in hand, entourage flanking her like well-dressed sentries. Up close, the red Dior was even more dramatic, a statement piece meant to announce dominance. "I'm Bailey," she said simply. Charlotte's eyes swept from Bailey's simple gold gown to her minimal jewelry, cataloguing, assessing, dismissing. "Bailey, just Bailey." Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "No last name, how mysterious." "Morgan's," Bailey offered, "Bailey Morgan." "Morgan," Charlotte rolled the name around like she was tasting wine. "I don't know any Morgans. Madison, do we know any Morgans?" The blonde from earlier shook her head obediently. "And I know everyone on the guest list. Daddy's very particular about who receives invitations." Bailey said nothing. Silence was a weapon people like Charlotte couldn't resist filling. "So how exactly did you get in here?" Charlotte stepped closer, her perfume, something French and expensive, invading the space between them. "Because this is a $5,000 plate charity gala. Invitation only, and you." Her gaze traveled down Bailey's dress again. "You don't exactly look like you have $5,000 for dinner." The entourage tittered, a chorus of practiced cruelty. "I was invited," Bailey said, her voice level. "By whom?" Charlotte's tone sharpened. "Because if you're someone's assistant or date, you should be sitting with them, not hovering around the champagne like..." She paused, letting the implication hang. "Well, like you're trying to blend in where you don't belong." A small crowd had begun to gather, drawn by the scent of confrontation, the way sharks sense blood. "Are you here with the catering staff?" Charlotte pressed. "Because I saw one of the servers earlier and she had a dress that color, similar fabric. Did you borrow it thinking no one would notice?" Bailey's hands remained relaxed at her sides. Her expression didn't shift. She'd learned long ago that people like Charlotte needed reactions the way addicts needed fixes. Deny them, and they escalated. "Or maybe," Charlotte's voice dropped to a stage whisper meant to carry, "maybe you're one of Daddy's charity cases, Did you win some kind of raffle? Experience how the other half lives for an evening. She turned to her audience. We do sponsor several underprivileged programs. It would be just like Daddy to give someone a taste of the good life. The phones came out. Silent witnesses recording what they thought would be a feel-good moment or a satisfying takedown. Charlotte raised her wine glass in mock salute. Well, enjoy it while it lasts, sweetheart. That's when she tilted her wrist. The wine soaked through silk in seconds, cold and deliberate. Bailey felt it spread across her skin, dripping down to pool at her feet. She didn't move, didn't blink. Just watched Charlotte's smirk spread like poison. Oops, Charlotte's voice dripped with false apology. Guess you'll always look dirty no matter what you wear. The crowd pressed closer, a living wall of designer fabric and gleaming jewelry. Phones captured every angle, every second of humiliation meant to go viral. Richard Whitmore materialized from the crowd like a shark drawn to commotion. 6'2", silver hair perfectly styled, custom tuxedo worth more than some people's cars. His face was flushed with scotch and satisfaction. What's going on here? His voice boomed across the marble floors. Daddy, Charlotte turned, playing innocent. This woman was harassing me. I think she might have stolen that dress. She won't tell me how she got in. Richard's eyes narrowed on Bailey. She saw the calculation behind them, the same look men like him wore when deciding whether something was worth their time or their cruelty. Is that right? He stepped closer, scotch sloshing in his crystal glass. Young lady, I'm going to need to see your invitation. Bailey reached for her clutch. Slowly, Richard commanded. Thomas, he snapped his fingers. A security guard appeared, built like a wall with a badge that said head of security but eyes that said I've done worse for less money. Check her bag, make sure she hasn't stolen anything. Thomas took Bailey's clutch, dumping the contents onto a nearby table. Lipstick, phone, credit card, driver's license. He picked up the license, studying it. Bailey Morgan, he read aloud, says here she's a consultant. His tone made it sound like an accusation. A consultant, Richard laughed, the sound carrying across the ballroom. How convenient, and where exactly is your invitation, Ms. Morgan? Digital, Bailey said quietly, on my phone. Let me see it, Richard held out his hand. Bailey unlocked her phone, pulled up the email. Richard barely glanced at it. This could be photoshopped. Thomas, I want her detained until we can verify her identity. She's disrupting my event, harassing my daughter, and I have reason to believe she may have gained entry under false pretenses. Sir, I can call, Bailey started. You can be quiet, Richard's voice cut like glass. Thomas, take her to the security office, now. Thomas grabbed Bailey's arm, fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. Cold metal circled her wrists, handcuffs clicking into place with the finality of a cell door closing. Wait in here, Thomas said, shoving her into a windowless room that smelled like coffee and sweat. Don't move, don't call anyone, the police are on their way. The door locked behind him with a sound like a gunshot. Bailey stood in the center of the room, wine-stained and handcuffed, and smiled. They had no idea what they'd just done. Thomas waited 3 minutes after locking the door before returning. Bailey heard his footsteps, heavy, confident, the walk of a man who'd done this before and gotten away with it. The lock clicked, he stepped inside, closing the door behind him. So he leaned against the wall, arms crossed. Want to tell me what you were really doing here? Bailey remained silent, standing in the center of the room with her wrists still cuffed behind her back. Wine had dried sticky on her skin. The Whitmores pay me very well to handle problems quietly. Thomas pushed off the wall, circling her slowly. Make them disappear before they become scandals. You understand what I'm saying? She understood perfectly. He was the kind of man rich people kept on retainer for situations that required deniability. Here's how this works, he continued. You're going to tell me who sent you, which competitor, which business rival, and then you're going to leave quietly. No police report, no social media posts, no lawyers. You forget tonight happened and we forget you existed. Bailey watched him circle, patient as a snake. But first, he moved to the table where her belongings were scattered. I need to make sure you're not recording anything. No hidden cameras, no wires. His hand hovered over her clutch. Mr. Whitmore's been burned before by people trying to catch him saying something stupid. He picked up the leather bag, examining it with practiced efficiency. Checked the lining, felt for hidden compartments, turned it inside out. That's when he saw it. Embossed on the inside of the clutch, small enough to miss on first glance but unmistakable once noticed, a family crest. Not decorative, not ornamental, a mark of ownership. 2 lions flanking a crown, beneath it a single word in Italian, Morti. Thomas froze, the colour drained from his face like water from a broken glass. No, his voice came out strangled. No, that's not, you can't be. Bailey finally spoke, her voice soft, almost gentle. You should uncuff me now. Jesus Christ, Thomas stumbled backward, nearly tripping over a chair. They said Bailey Morgan, not oh God, oh God. The cuffs, Bailey repeated. His hands shook as he fumbled for the keys, dropping them twice before managing to unlock the handcuffs. They clattered to the floor. Thomas backed toward the door, hands raised like she was pointing a gun at him. I didn't know, I swear to God I didn't know. They just said, Charlotte said you were nobody, just some. Where's my phone? Bailey rubbed her wrists, feeling circulation return. On the table, everything's on the table. Please, I have kids, I was just doing my job. Bailey picked up her phone, scrolling to a single contact. Her thumb hovered over the call button. How long, she asked Thomas, until the Whitmores realized their mistake. He was crying now, please, please don't. She pressed call. Not long enough. The phone rang once before Vincenzo answered. Are you hurt? No greeting, no preliminaries, just the question that mattered. Wine-stained, handcuffed, detained in a storage room by their head of security. Bailey's voice remained calm, but no, not hurt. Silence on the other end, the kind that preceded hurricanes. I'm still at the estate, she continued. They think I'm waiting for the police. 20 minutes, the line went dead. Bailey turned to Thomas, who'd collapsed into a chair, head in his hands. You should leave, now, get as far from here as you can. They'll find me, he whispered. Your brother, he'll find me anyway. Probably, Bailey agreed, but at least you won't be here when he arrives. Thomas ran. Bailey took her time. She cleaned wine from her arms with paper towels from the dispenser, fixed her hair in the reflection of a dark computer screen, reapplied lipstick. 17 minutes passed. She walked to the door, opened it, and made her way back toward the ballroom. The gala continued, oblivious. Charlotte held court near the staircase, reenacting her victory for a fresh audience. Richard Whitmore laughed with investors by the bar. The orchestra played something classical and forgettable. Bailey stopped at the entrance to the ballroom, clearly visible but not entering. She waited. 18 minutes. The main doors, 12 feet of carved mahogany, exploded inward. Not violently, no one kicked them open. They simply swung wide with the inevitability of fate, and Vincenzo Morti walked through. 20 men followed him, not security guards, associates. Each one a carefully chosen message written in tailored suits and dead eyes. They moved in formation, spreading out to cover exits, their presence sucking oxygen from the room. The orchestra stopped mid-measure. Conversations died like candles in wind. 200 people turned to watch as Vincenzo crossed the marble floor, his footsteps the only sound in the cavernous space. He was dressed in black, suit, shirt, tie, like he'd come from a funeral. In a way he had, the Whitmores just didn't know it yet. Charlotte saw him first. Her face went from confusion to fear in the span of a heartbeat. She'd seen his photo in Forbes, in business journals, in police reports that her father's lawyers had obtained. Everyone knew Vincenzo Morti. Everyone feared him. Richard Whitmore stepped forward, scotch forgotten, his face a mask of forced confidence. Mr. Morti, this is unexpected. We didn't know you'd be attending. Vincenzo's gaze swept past him like he was furniture. His eyes found Bailey across the room. Are you all right? He called out, his voice carrying effortlessly. Every head turned to Bailey. She stepped into the ballroom, wine stains visible on her gold dress, wrists still marked red from handcuffs. I'm fine, she said, just needed you to see something. Vincenzo smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. Show me. Bailey walked across the ballroom floor, 200 pairs of eyes tracking her movement. She stopped beside her brother, close enough that there could be no mistaking the connection. This is my sister, Vincenzo said. His voice carried to every corner of the room, quiet but absolute. Bailey Morti. The name landed like a bomb. Phones that had been recording Charlotte's earlier triumph now captured something else entirely, the moment the Whitmores realized they'd humiliated the wrong woman. Charlotte's wine glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on marble. Richard Whitmore's face cycled through emotions: confusion, recognition, horror, desperate calculation. "Mr. Morty, there's been a terrible misunderstanding. We had no idea, Charlotte didn't know." "You had my sister handcuffed," Vincenzo interrupted. "Detained in a storage room, accused of theft." He paused, letting each word settle. "After your daughter assaulted her with a wine glass and called her, what was it, Bailey?" "A charity case," Bailey said softly. "Dirty, someone who didn't belong." Richard's mouth opened and closed. No sound emerged. Vincenzo reached into his jacket pocket. The 20 associates shifted slightly, hands moving toward their own jackets. But what Vincenzo withdrew was simply a phone. He scrolled, tapped, then turned the screen toward Richard. "Do you know what this is?" Richard squinted at the document displayed. His face went from red to white in seconds. "That's the deed to your estate. 12 acres, waterfront, appraised at 47 million. Vincenzo's tone remained conversational, almost friendly. "Held in trust by Castellano Properties, LLC, which is owned by Redstone Holdings, which is owned by Maritime Capital Partners, which is owned by me." The ballroom had gone silent enough to hear champagne bubbles bursting. "You don't own this house, Richard. You never did. You've been paying rent, disguised as property taxes, to my family for 11 years. Vincenzo pocketed his phone. "Your downtown office building, mine. The parking structure on 5th, mine. That luxury development you're planning in the North District, built on land I own through 6 different shell companies." Charlotte made a small sound, something between a gasp and a sob. "You want to know the beautiful part?" Vincenzo stepped closer to Richard, who looked like he might vomit. "I was content to let you continue believing you were royalty. Collect your rent, let you play king in a castle that wasn't yours, but then you touched my sister." "We'll make this right," Richard stammered. "Any compensation she wants, we'll." "Compensation?" Vincenzo's laugh was soft, deadly. "Richard, you can't compensate someone with money that's already theirs." He turned to his associates. "Marco, make the calls." Marco nodded, phone already in hand. "What calls?" Richard's voice cracked. "What are you?" "Eviction notices," Vincenzo said simply. "You have 30 days. The 30 days passed like a slow-motion avalanche. Day 3, the eviction notice arrived by courier, hand-delivered by a lawyer whose retainer cost more than Richard Whitmore paid his entire household staff annually. Richard's own attorneys reviewed the documentation, then quietly advised settlement. The paper trail was immaculate: 11 years of shell companies, legitimate transactions, ironclad ownership. Fighting it would cost millions and accomplish nothing. Day 7, the video surfaced. Not from the Gala guests' phones, those had been confiscated by Vincenzo's associates before anyone left that night. This footage came from the estate's own security cameras, crystal clear, perfectly angled. Charlotte pouring wine on Bailey, Richard ordering her detained, Thomas handcuffing a woman whose only crime was existing in their space. The video went viral within hours. Day 9, 3 women came forward, former housekeepers, a nanny, a personal assistant. They told stories of Charlotte's casual cruelty, Richard's verbal abuse, a family that treated staff like furniture. Employment lawyers filed suit. The local news picked up the story. Billionaire family accused of systemic abuse. Day 12, federal investigators arrived. Not because of Bailey, the Mortys didn't involve authorities in family matters. But Richard's business partner, sensing the empire's collapse, had turned informant. Tax evasion, fraud, bribery of city officials to fast-track development projects. The charges stacked up like cordwood. Day 15, Charlotte was arrested. Not for assault, Bailey had declined to press charges. Instead, the DA charged her with insurance fraud, that Mercedes she'd crashed 2 years ago. She'd filed a false police report, claimed it was stolen, collected the payout while the car sat in a private garage being repaired. A felony. Evidence provided anonymously, but everyone knew the source. Day 23, the Whitmore mansion was emptied. Moving trucks lined the circular driveway as decades of accumulated wealth was packed into boxes. Neighbors watched from behind curtains, the same people who'd attended their parties, smiled at their charity galas, pretended friendship. None offered help. Money loved winners. It abandoned losers with brutal efficiency. Day 28, Charlotte stood before a judge. Her lawyer, a public defender now, the expensive ones had all dropped her, argued for leniency. First offense. Moment of poor judgment, wealthy girl who'd made a mistake. The judge sentenced her to 18 months. Day 30, the Whitmore family moved into a rented townhouse in a neighborhood they'd once dismissed as too urban. 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, street parking. Bailey stood on the mansion's front steps, watching contractors measure doorways for the renovation. The estate would become a community center, job training, after-school programs, resources for the families Richard had wanted to displace from the North District. Vincenzo appeared beside her, hands in his pockets, satisfied. And as Bailey thought about Charlotte's smirk, the wine soaking through silk, the handcuffs clicking shut. Yes, she said, I am. 6 months later, Bailey stood in her office on the 40th floor, watching construction crews transform the Whitmore estate below. The chandeliers had been removed, sold at auction. The marble floors remained, too expensive to replace, too beautiful to destroy. But the ballroom where Charlotte had humiliated her now echoed with different sounds. Power drills, hammers, the voices of workers building something that mattered. Her phone buzzed, a text from Vincenzo, board meeting in 20, don't be late. She smiled. Her brother ran his empire with precision, but he still texted like an annoyed older sibling. A knock at her door. Come in, she called. Marco entered, tablet in hand. The North District project is ahead of schedule. First families move into the renovated buildings next month. He swiped through photos, apartments with new windows, working heat, kitchens that weren't fire hazards. The community centre opens in 3 weeks. They're calling it the Morty Centre. No, Bailey said immediately, just the centre, no family name. Marco raised an eyebrow but nodded. As you wish. Also, he hesitated. Charlotte Whitmore was released early, good behaviour. Bailey turned from the window. Where is she now? Working at a call centre in Delaware. Her parents are there too. Richard got a job at an accounting firm, entry-level. Marco's expression remained neutral, but Bailey heard the satisfaction underneath. The mother does data entry. And Charlotte? Customer service, minimum wage plus commission. Marco set the tablet down. She uses a different name now. Morgan, actually, Charlotte Morgan. Bailey absorbed this, the irony not lost on her. The name Charlotte had mocked was now the one she hid behind. Should we? Marco started. No, Bailey's voice was firm. We're done, they lost everything that mattered to them, that's enough. Marco nodded and left. Bailey returned to the window, watching the estate transform. In 3 weeks, kids from the North District would walk through those doors Charlotte had guarded so viciously. They'd study in rooms where billionaires once plotted displacement. They'd dream in spaces designed for exclusion. Her phone buzzed again. Another text from Vincenzo. 10 minutes, I know you're staring out the window. She laughed, grabbed her jacket and headed for the elevator. On the way down, she passed a framed photo in the hallway, her father, decades ago, standing in front of a building he'd just acquired. The inscription read, "Power isn't what you take, it's what you build." The Whitmores had taken. They'd hoarded, excluded, humiliated. They'd built an empire on cruelty and called it success. Bailey had taken that empire and built something else. As the elevator descended, she caught her reflection in the polished steel doors. Gold dress replaced by a tailored suit. Wine stains gone. But the expression remained, quiet confidence, controlled power, the look of someone who knew exactly who she was. A Morty. And that meant something.